Good morning to all my friends and family, and welcome to this edition of Jim's 5am Club. I'm up here on the International Passenger Terminal, and it looks like that we've got a small art exhibition or something happening over here. There's a couple of installations which are quite interesting, so I thought I'd use this as a backdrop to commence the episode, the walk and talk that I plan to do today. And the book summary that I'm going to go through is entitled The General Theory of Love by an author known as Thomas Lewis, excuse me, where he talks about love from a chemical perspective. So once again, very, very interesting in terms of looking at things and just building our knowledge in terms of the chemistries, the chemicals that are bound in our bodies that enable us to I guess have sensations and create connections. And the author goes on to kick off the book by talking about three types of chemicals. And the three types of chemicals are serotonin, oxytocin, and opiates. And he says that these three chemicals are naturally occurring in the body, and they are naturally occurring and influence the way we see and experience things. And they're responsible. These chemicals in the brain are responsible for the feelings of love and attachment that we have. Because we have things in our brains known as neurotransmitters. So we're getting a little bit technical here in terms of why we love and what causes love. But in our brains we have things known as neurotransmitters, which are stimulated by chemicals. So the chemicals are secreted into our body, into our bloodstream, enter our brain, I guess, is one way of looking at it. And what happens is once they're secreted, once they're in there, they activate these neurotransmitters, and by activating the neurotransmitters, they enable us to have sensations which create that sense or that feeling of love that we all get to enjoy at different times of our lives. So let's have a look at these chemicals a little bit more deeply. It's not going to be a chemical lesson, but understanding how these chemicals work is really interesting. So it's serotonin. Serotonin is a chemical which basically, according to the author, reduces our feeling of depression and anxiety. So I guess the more serotonin we have in our bodies, the less depressed and the less anxious we will feel, which I think is a good thing. But all of these are naturally created in our bodies, and I guess some people have more and some people have less, and that is a reason why sometimes psychologists, psychiatrists, doctors prescribe medication for some people to increase or decrease the amount of serotonin in their bodies in order to help them get more regulated, I'd imagine. Oxytocin is a cracker, is an interesting one, because oxytocin is a chemical that increases our feeling of attachment our feeling of attachment and our feeling of connection. So there are some things which stimulate this chemical. And interestingly enough, this is a real powerful and interesting point, that during childbirth, oxytocin is available at very, very high levels. And the reason for this, according to the doctors and scientists, is to enable the mother to be connected to the child, to bond with the child. So having a lot of oxytocin available in the brain and in the body during childbirth and after childbirth, because it also gets stimulated by breastfeeding, or these days people want to try and suggest it's called chest feeding. But breastfeeding and childbirth stimulate this chemical, which makes it available in the brain, and it increases our feeling of attachment and bonding for a mother to connect with her child. So a lot of mothers will probably tell you that once they give birth, that the love and the attachment that they have for their child is something that overwhelms them. They never thought that it would be possible to love somebody so much and to be attached to something so much. But it's this chemical that stimulates those neurotransmitters that enables us to have those feelings. The other thing also is that, just so you're aware, that oxytocin is also stimulated during sex, during orgasm. So these, once again, are chemicals that make a couple feel more attached, and hence why I guess sexual relationships are important for couples, because it brings them together and it keeps them connected together because of this hormone which gets stimulated in their bodies. And the last chemical that the author talks about are opiates, things like endorphins. And I remember reading in another book summary where it said that endorphins are 100 times more powerful than morphine, and they are naturally occurring in our bodies. And that is why athletes, martial artists, you name it, people who compete don't feel pain. And you wonder, some of that is through conditioning, but the other thing is that their bodies are able to stimulate these opiates, these endorphins, that enables them to deal with significant amounts of traumatic pain, because as we said, that these opiates that the body naturally creates are 100 times more powerful than morphine. And that's why sometimes, when you've got a headache or when you've got a pain and you take a tablet, you take a Nurofen, that pain is almost immediately resolved as soon as you pop the tablet in your mouth and you go, geez, I can't believe it worked so quickly. But the reality is, it's not the tablet that worked so quickly, it's the opiates that your body naturally stimulates that cause the pain relief. So it's more of a mind over matter sort of thing. So the author then goes on to talk about a few other things, and he says that the difficulties that you may have with emotions come from our upbringing, and you can fix this by optimizing your brain through therapy. So a lot of challenges that people face emotionally are things that they've inherited from their families, from their parents. Because what the author says that in our brains we have things called attractors, and our memory connects together to form these attractors, which allows us to classify information. Important to know that when we are born, we have no attractors whatsoever. So each and every person starts with a clean slate. So naturally, we learn things from our parents and our carers, our grandparents, our early teachers, our babysitters. And for example, when a child falls, what they do is they look to their parents for a reaction. And if they see concern on their parents' face, they will cry. If they don't see any concern, then usually they're fine. So our parents and our family is vital for our growth and development, and we learn a lot of things in terms of our behaviour, our fears and our joys from the people around us. So we end up inheriting from our parents their emotional problems as well. So if you have a parent who's overly concerned or overly protective, those anxieties will wash off onto their child and cause them problems. But I guess the good thing, the important thing to understand, is that these attractors can be reprogrammed, reshaped, can be broken and repatched. And it's called limbic revision in psychology. So once again, it's important to understand that a lot of the things that trouble us in life are based on how many people have been brought up. So a wonderful, a good childhood is probably the greatest investment that a parent can ever give their children. And the last point that the author makes in this book is the importance of knowing the difference between being in love and loving someone, because they're two very, very different sensations. Some people are in love with being in love. And once again, it's a very, very sensitive topic. But a lot of people marry for the wrong reason. They marry just so they can tick the box and say that they are in love. But they end up living a very, very separate life. You know, you've got married singles. You know, people who are married but live quite separate lives, have very, very few shared interests. You know, but what we learn is that mature affection is knowing and caring for each other, and you know, wanting to be with each other in good times and in bad times. You know, whilst it's a bit cliche to say that, you know, nobody marries, you know, for worse. But the great thing is to be in the same room with your partner, to be just there, not even talking, just lying down on the couch and just enjoying each other's company. Not too many people, not too many couples can enjoy that style of relationship. But if you want to stay together and married and in love for a lifetime, then you need to enjoy each other's acquaintances. To enjoy each other's company, I mean, and not be just mere acquaintances. So I think that's it. So thank you very much for joining me on this episode of Jim's 5am Club. As you can see, Sydney Harbour, Circular Quay is now getting busy. Ferries moving to and fro. And what I'll do is I'll just go over there and just get on a ferry and head round to Piedmont so I can do my training. So Yassas, take care. I look forward to coming to you again from a different location with a different message, a message of empowerment, and have a wonderful day. Yassas, Philakia, que Christos Anesti. Bye for now. Ciao.